This is Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. Here are your hosts, Dr. Tim Slekar and Dr. Johnny Lupinacci, educated educators talking education.
Yes, it is. Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. Educated educators talking education. Tuesday night, Tim and Jess, Johnny, we're giving him a little time off. You know, his daughter has a dance recital. We thought, Jess, we should let him attend that, you know?
Absolutely. It's important.
It's important. And, I think, if we have the ability to, maybe Johnny can send us some pictures of him being. No, we don't need proof. It's Busted Pencils. The number's 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Yeah, Civic Media. Jess, I was thinking about this. So I was out, as Johnny put out there, out doing some, I guess you'd say some research, some connections with some people.
Castle visiting.
Was out there. And I was in the Midwest area of Michigan and spending some time in Michigan going forth and meeting lots of cool people, people involved with artificial intelligence and how they might use artificial intelligence in the school. And it's been, it's been great to go out and do some, to do some of the, call it research or glad handing, just really talking to potential guests for the show because there's so much going on. And right now, Michigan has really stepped up as a key state to watch because of the amount of support they keep putting forward for their public schools, not just K-12, but higher education included.
Oh, yeah.
And so we are just over there saying, like, hey, what's it like to be in a state where
values public education?
It's like, it's like a foreign country. It's like, what in the world? And so I've got to meet a lot of great people over there in Michigan. And so, we'll be highlighting them in the coming weeks and months.
Ooh, goody.
Yeah, we love to hear, happy stories about people doing great work. Just though too, while I was there, I had the Civic Media app.
Very good.
Because the Civic Media app allows me to listen to Busted Pencils anywhere, anytime on my smartphone, and not just Busted Pencils, all of the Civic Media shows. Download that app. Jess, Wisconsin's fall primary election, though, it's today, Tuesday.
I voted. I got my sticker right here.
Oh, nice. You got to voted. The polls close at 8 p.m. If you have not voted yet, please do so now. To find your polling location, go to myvotewi.gov. If you are in line by 8 p.m., you will be allowed to cast your ballot. At 8 p.m., tune in to your favorite Civic Media station for results coverage anchored by news director Terry Bell. Man, and the other part, though, too, Jess, you know what's really special? Busted Pencils is sponsored by the Minocqua Brewing Company, who sued the state of Wisconsin to end its really crappy voucher system that hurts public schools. Minocqua Brewing Company is making Wisconsin great again, one beer at a time. Check out MinocquaBrewingCompany.com to see where you can buy their progressive beer. Busted Pencils, fully leaded. I am excited to be here tonight. We announced, was it 2 months ago, the partnership, or a month ago, Jess? Like, man, things go fly so fast.
I think it's been almost 3 months, Tim.
It's been 3 months. Our Rethinking Schools relaunch of a partnership that had begun when Busted Pencils was a standalone podcast and then went to a radio show. We re-engaged with Rethinking Schools to have that partnership. We've had their Sierra Keller-Jones on to talk about the partnership and how we're going to be featuring authors' editions to really highlight that work that they continue to do. Rethinking Schools, we said, if you remember, anybody's like acquaintance for times, man, they have brought up every topic that you could say, wait a minute, you come after this yet? Rethinking Columbus. I say that's always my landmark of going, when did Rethinking Schools emerge into my kind of visual field? Is when they put out that 500th year anniversary. What does it mean to rethink teaching Columbus? Now, think about all of those topics. Our guest tonight, though, editor, From the summer issue of Rethinking Schools, the transgender justice in schools, it's a life or death thing. Welcome to Busted Pencils. Ty Marshall. Ty, thank you so much for coming to Busted Pencils tonight.
Absolutely.
So we got the summer edition and a book we're going to talk about. But I getting ready for the show, I'm reading, I'm doing my research, and I go back 2020, I think it was, and there's a post, instructional time. And I went through that and read that post and was like, okay, so this is the introduction to Ty Marshall, and the reality of what it meant at that moment when the transition, because we're going to be talking about that, the transition was complete, and the implications of what that meant for you as a classroom teacher who then was told, and you had to sign your name to this, that the transition, you're going to teach social studies, damn it, Ty.
Right.
Talk about
it. I mean, it's easy to laugh about now, with some room, but I think the way that the union rep, with all his best intentions, and the district sort of responded to my transition was a little bit of like, if we can control the conversation around this, we're going to come out looking okay. And I think that element of like trying to delete sort of the existence of transness, or like kind of let's take the uncomfortable stuff and put it over here, far away, is like when people are not yet comfortable and ready to talk about challenging topics. And at the time I was told like, this is to protect you, but ultimately I feel like what got demonstrated to my students and the whole community was like, we are very uncomfortable with trans people. We are not willing to have this be a part of our curriculum. And it's that kind of sense of what we allow to be conversation and just sort of like a part of our humanity in the classroom, like controlling that piece. It was really hard.
Yeah, I mean, the whole sense of it was truly, at an erasure moment of saying, okay, this year, fine, you're Ty Marshall, the male social studies teacher. And as a social studies teacher, Ty, that's what you will teach. That's what you will talk about, regardless of the potential students and how they may approach and even ask questions, the way some parents, the way some of your colleagues. No. And that's 2020. This is
Right.
This is before all of the quote horrendous don't say gay type of bills, anti-LGBTQ type of craziness that we're dealing with then. And that simple act of what you said, was there was a union rep, and again, intentions wherever they were, but the policy was to say, Ty, you're a social studies teacher. That's what you talk about. And that's all you're going to talk about. To think about that now going to 2024, and we've got the new edition, Transgender Justice in School, coming out of Rethinking Schools, and then the whole book dedicated to this. Tell me about the either where we're at since 2020 when you wrote that really, very personal, very painful account of what happened at that time when you had the transition moment. And now here we are, 2024, where we're writing transgender justice, and we're saying coming out of, some of the most horrendous. I'm in Ohio, and I said Ohio has somehow escaped the scrutiny of the horrendousness of the attack on LGBTQ students. Like, it's always focused on Florida or this, but it's as bad, if not worse, here in Ohio. To a teacher right now in Southeast Ohio, maybe, this is heart of Appalachian, Ohio, saying, man, I'm listening to Busted Pencils tonight. I'm listening to Tim. I'm listening to Ty. I want to get that Rethinking Schools edition. Man, I'm not going to put that on my desk though, as coming back to school. How do you talk to people about, this idea that you have a whole edition of both the magazine and a book that's going to be talking about transgender justice? What does that mean to you?
I mean, that's such a great question. I think, we've come, like, when you're talking about 2020 to 2024, right? Like, I feel like we have come from the visibility of trans people. I mean, even, back to like 2014, there was like that famous interview with Laverne Cox, where, she's, putting herself forward as this beautiful, powerful actress, and then being asked like these really invasive questions about her body and her surgery and her hormones. It was like the Katie Couric show.
Yeah.
So just to say, like, with visibility comes backlash. And I think that's, what we're seeing. And it's really important to remember that all these bills that are being pushed, like you mentioned, like Don't Say Gay, and, the bathroom bills, the bills targeting trans youth who just want to participate in sports, like all of that, like both schools are the epicenter of so many of those bills. So we have this power to like change the conversation to be focused on people's humanity rather than like, again, what medical treatment is this student undergoing, right? Like we protect that stuff with students in every other aspect. Why are we not protecting it in terms of, trans students? And then I think the other piece is just, because the audience of this show is like from all over, like these bills are being introduced by organizations that are not necessarily even based in the places where they're pushing this legislation, right? Like it's a real project. And so as much as we can feel that sense of like power and connection with other people who are fighting for justice, that's the purpose of the book and the magazine, to really be a place like, we want folks to do study groups with the book, with their union or their church or whatever they can to really start building that sense of like what we're seeing in the legislature is not us. So
It's Busted Pencils. It's fully leaded education talk. The number's 855-752-4842. Our guest, Ty Marshall. He's the editor of the new edition, summer edition of Rethinking Schools, Transgender Justice in the School, and also the new book coming out. We're going to talk more about that. You can give us a call, 855-752-4842. Hey, talk to us about what's happening where you are in this issue. Trans justice. Busted Pencils.
All right, Ty, welcome to the bonus content, what we call this little time in between.
Okay.
People who are streaming can still hear us. They can't see us. But it's just a little time also for me to just check in, make sure that everything is going well. I'm hearing a little bit of echo on your side, Ty. I'm working on modulating it from my side.
Okay. Is there anything?
Do you have any headphones?
I'm wearing them right now with a mic attached to them, but
oh my goodness, and I'm still getting echo. Okay. I'm just gonna ride the fader then.
Okay, I'm super sorry.
Yeah.
I can check my settings and make sure it's not, feeding from both of them somehow.
Oh, yeah, that may be happening.
Yeah, I was gonna say that typically sometimes that's what's happening is that you have the headphones on, but it's coming off your computer anyway.
Yep.
Right.
For right now, don't worry about it. We're coming back in 10 seconds. So that's something you can do during our longer break.
Okay, great.
Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk, educated educators talking education. The number's 855-752-4842. Sherry and Horicon, thank you. Good evening to you. And guess what, Jess? Sherry voted wearing her sticker too. Just putting it out there.
Very good. It's one of my favorite fashion statements to make.
I voted. You put that, and then you know what? If you're really doing it, you go out and you donate blood on the same day you voted, and you get to wear both of those little stickers and really show
When
off.
I try to do that, they have to put the blood back, so it's
Sorry, we're not taking any. Our guest is Ty Marshall, and he is the editor of the new book Transgender Justice in School, and also the new edition of the Summer of Rethinking Schools. It's a life or death thing. The title of the anchor article in the summer edition doesn't mince words, Ty. Transgender education and support in the school is life or death. What challenges currently face transgender students and educators?
I mean, we touched a little bit on the number of laws that are.
Thanks, Jess.
sorry, that's just our soundboard throwing, I don't know, a little party for itself.
Yeah,
I'm so sorry,
great,
Ty. Please continue.
It really wants to have that party.
There's nothing wrong with a little journey. Okay, Ty. So back, to the
Yeah.
question here.
So we've talked a little bit about like these a huge number of bans on gender affirming care for kids and adults, and then how that's trickling into schools as far as like requiring some schools to deliberately misgender kids, that even if the teachers are affirming of that kid's identity, the school policy is that you have to use their birth name. And some of that is, also impacting trans teachers, whether they're targeted for their identity or their curriculum, and not just trans teachers who are willing to teach anything about queer and trans issues. The challenges are a lot. And I think our hope with the book is really to present, what's at stake, right? The first chapter is really kind of hitting on that, life or death with real personal experiences from trans authors who are teachers, and then trying to give folks some examples of like, where could you be bringing in more trans joy, trans visibility in your curriculum, really centering student voices, of course, in the third chapter. And then, the fourth chapter, how do we organize in this current climate, right? Where, even a teacher who, reads a book about rainbows gets fired, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And in fact, where Jess is in Waukesha, that's where the teacher was from
Right.
Rainbow Land, as you point that out. Ty, though, too, life or death, it is. When you talk about that, I know there is this kind of part where what you even talk about, the bullying that occurs and in your experience as a teacher, and then seeing that as that, I mean, how does somebody, and I'm thinking about you back in 2020 when you quote had to sign off on instructional time, that the reality even then was, okay, whatever happens to me personally and the attacks I get, I have to kind of hold those in tight and not talk about them. But then has students who might even approach you from that standpoint of saying, Mr. Marshall, can we talk?
Right.
Because at that moment, that child, that student, that may be a life or death moment when they say, Mr. Marshall, can we talk?
Right. Yes. I mean, and I think what's so interesting about like, whatever then to now for me personally, but I think also for a lot of educators, whether it's teachers of color trying to teach, about their history, anybody, like the stakes with students coming out of COVID, I feel like there's a very much like a higher emphasis on like what is felt in the classroom, and like how do people feel connected, and where we're still struggling with that as a whole society, right? But we're just we're the petri dish that gets to figure that out. But like I was teaching criminal justice last year, and I had students get to hear all these amazing speakers, and it could be the most well-spoken, great leftists, and the students are like, not sure about that vibe, like that sense of connection is so critical right now. And I think the impact on trans youth, if their trans teachers are silenced, is just like a double message, right? Of like, you know, they only see represented trans people who are like fearful. And that's why, you know, in writing that and in the sort of edited version of that article, which is in the book, I really did want to emphasize that sense of like humanity and joy. That's like what we have control over as educators in our rooms. So
Well, and the joy, we love that word, Jess and I and Johnny, because we have just been riding the joy train, you know, coming out of the Waltz announcement with the vice president and Kamala Harris. You know, there's been this sense of joy, and you talk about that word, because instead of despair, but to experience joy. What about a teacher right now who's out there and they want to push back and they want to bring this issue of Rethinking Schools, the magazine or the book, and put it on their bookshelf? How do they resist the oppressive anti-LGBTQ realities that are out there today?
yes, I mean, I think first and foremost, like, don't be a loner, right? Like a lone wolf teacher always sinks. So I think, you know, when you're bringing something out, find your allies in your building. You know, unions are doing some cool advocacy for trans teachers and making sure the medical care and the contracts they fight for are trans inclusive. People are doing amazing work around the school boards and sort of some of those organizing campaigns. So I think, you know, knowing who your allies are there parents that you can call on? There's some great examples of folks using parent allies to do good. So yeah, just I think not being alone. And I think, you know, highlighting those pieces of resistance, like as we were putting this book together, when I first thought about these laws, these trans healthcare bans, gosh, was this summer of 22? My students were like, and we're there's no hope, you know? And so we really tried to put together some curriculum, and Linda has a great example of that in the book of how do we highlight what resistance is working, right? If we're not winning in the courts, where are we winning, you know? And there's wonderful examples of that, of, you know, people flying folks to different states to get healthcare, or having drag shows on the Capitol steps to protest bans. So.
Man, well, I know where else too. Rethinking Schools. It's always there. Rethinking Schools, our partnership is BustED Pencils, Rethinking Schools, and our author, Ty Marshall, editor, also of the book Transgender Justice in School, both the edition that's out right now that you can go to Rethinking Schools and check that out. When we get back, more questions. Stay tuned.
It's my right to choose, not the religious lunatics or fundamental extremists. It's their fight to lose. I'm a modern anarchist, a punk rock existentialist who wants to make the whole world coexist.
There it is.
We're back to the bonus.
We're back to the bonus. How's it going, Ty? What do you think?
It's good. I was just gonna say, Jess, it says everything's coming out of my headphones, output headphones, input mic jack. Is there anything else you want me to do to?
Nope. That's all good.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you much.
It's all good. Hey, Jess, was that a fake phone call that we had come up on the screen there?
I have no idea. It popped up for like 5 seconds and then it was gone.
Okay, so it was gone. Yeah.
So yeah, how do you tell if you're getting responses during this show? Like,
so it's pretty quiet today. So far, we're getting just a couple texts in from some of our regulars.
Yeah.
And then just one phone call that they dropped it after a few seconds.
But we're able to. I have a different screen up, Ty, that shows me any type of activity, whether people are making phone calls, whether they're texting through Facebook or the Civic Media app. We can we can kind of watch that and see that as that's coming in. Yeah, right now it's slow, but it doesn't, we're always thinking it's just like what happens. And I really tend to think that whenever we have a guest on, our people tend to listen than call in and get involved because they're listening to, you and me talk and Jess and then the interaction with Johnny. And, I just feel like we get more quote audience participation on nights when it's just Johnny and me and Jess kind of
Yeah.
really, it's more of a free form when
Right,
it's
right.
and when there's a guest on, I mean, people are listening. Sometimes what'll happen with a guest is that people will wait until after the interview part is over and we said through this last section that we're going to do, and
Right.
then in that fourth section occasionally some people will talk and be like, oh, call in and say, wow, that was a great interview, thanks for doing that, and things like that. But so when we do come back and we are going to, this is where we say this is the time where we have the most time to talk. Be ready at that 4:40 when you're going to hear that bell where we're going to do that democracy in action kind of bit. And then we'll come back into that, but we'll have some time. And this is where too really want to say, okay, Ty, most, important aspect, and again, whatever, you can't really pick this one, but what should I be looking for when I pick up this book? What is the most powerful statement that comes across? I know the answer is all of it.
Right.
But have you guys gotten, I saw there's some reviews, have you started to get feedback from classroom teachers, or is this kind of like more like, okay, this is dropped now, kind of it's a back to school type of issue?
Yeah, it's more like the second one. Right now, just people are doing pre-orders and they're going to start getting shipped in the next couple weeks, I think.
And that's
but
the
yeah,
book.
it's still really early in the process. Yeah.
Okay, and that's the
So
book.
as we go into this next section, we're gonna talk. We've got some more questions about like joy, especially,
Yeah, I'm going to go right in.
and sort of just what the process was to actually put together the magazine edition. So like who you reached out to and the stories that you highlight, especially the voices of children that you have, I think is so important.
Yeah, and just to
We're going
clarify,
back
I
in
saw
a
that
minute.
question. So I am not a normal editor with Rethinking Schools. I just came on board for this one book. So when you ask about the magazine, I didn't have a role in that. That just was a way to highlight the book, just so you know.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
Okay. Yeah, I got a sense that the bigger, when I say bigger, but the big thrust here is the book, and that even the edition of the magazine is really,
It was basically pulled material. Yep,
yeah,
exactly.
it's book promotion.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I had when I was a teacher, I had
Back in 20.
Rethinking Schools shelf.
Yes, yes.
And I said it was the act, my students engaged that shelf
10.
more often than any.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there it is. Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. 855-752-4842. If you want to be an educated educator talking education, you can give us a call. Our guest, Ty Marshall, he is one of the editors of the new book coming out from Rethinking Schools, Transgender Justice in the School. We're talking about also right now the preview, which really is in the Rethinking Schools magazine. So if you go to rethinkingschools.org to check out the website, you can pull up the current issue, and there are some pieces in there that are, as you were saying, Ty, are pulled from the book to kind of get people ready so that they can start to get ready to order the book. And when it's going, Ty, I want to read though from this, and then I want to get your reaction to this. I want to show students what steady self-love in the face of fear looks like, because we all face it. I want to teach my students that being trans means continuing to live into our joy and express our full selves despite backlash. A teacher in their full humanity and power can recognize the same in their students and demand better from their education system that dehumanizes all of us. That's Ty Marshall right there. Man, what comes, powerful stuff, but joy, the word joy. Talk talk more about that whole idea of claiming that joy, because I think so often, because it's a serious issue, because it does happen, but the physical abuse, the bullying abuse, even to the point of the mental health toll of being trans in this part, so much of the exposure when we quote want to delve into these issues, sadly we talk about suicide and not joy. So how do you get people to move into that joy?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And one of the students, in one of the classrooms as we were writing this book, was like, the only time I've ever gotten to study trans people in school has been to look at suicide statistics. And that is often where that introduction happens. Like, as in health class, it's like this difficult, hard thing, right? And I feel like, there's a movement that I think, we've learned from authors of color, teachers of color, about like, how do you pivot from like, the character in the book is struggling, right? The Black, the Latino, whatever character is their whole identity is struggle, versus like they also are really good at soccer, or they are surrounded by love, right? Like, so that like casual diversity sort of shift, I think is a huge part of that. And I think like, the humanity piece in that quote you read, like that's, I think for me, at least as a teacher committed to justice, despite all that we've been through. I mean, I'm only in my 8th year, so I'm a baby as far as like the fights in education. But we see a lot of rollbacks of what we're allowed to teach about and what are the constraints on our time. And so ultimately, right, what we can do that is really powerful is be in a room with young people who are studying the world and want to change it, and like feel like they are valued and they belong there. There aren't many places like that anymore. So
No, and so schools and communities that are interested in creating these environments that promote steady self-love and queer joy. What are your recommendations to somebody who's listening to the show right now and saying, "Yeah, I don't want to talk about the horrible statistics as my introduction into this topic. I want to talk about the joy and the humanity."
yeah.
I would say the first thing is, what you're gonna say, they should order the book.
Yes, please order the book. I mean, I think there's a couple of really, joyful and expansive like curriculum options. The science teacher who writes a couple of the articles, Sam Long, is brilliant. And just, talks a lot about how like gender expansiveness in the way you teach science, touches on like the way that gender stereotypes or policing gender limits all of us, right? Like, even as a cisgender person, if you are constantly being critiqued about your gender expression, that's going to limit how you move through the world, right? Really famous with, recently in the Olympics, the gold medalist boxer, the Algerian boxer in Maine, just, right, that restriction is going to hurt everyone. So there's some wonderful science examples of like expansion and how we talk about gender, and the other piece, like the resistance, the way we fight back against these laws, I think is another one that can give people a lot of a sense of hope, right? Like, we study resistance, so we know how to do it. So
There, what in the world? There it was. There's that
Oh, I
bell.
missed your reaction to the bell, Tim.
Jess, you know what that bell is. Democracy in action. Jess, what do you got?
Every day here on Busted Pencils, we take a minute to educate ourselves and remind ourselves of core democratic values. Today, we're highlighting 2 democratic values: life and the pursuit of happiness. And these are directly connected to Ty's work as an educator and with his work with Rethinking Schools and this edition of Transgender Justice in Classrooms. It is absolutely essential for the life of LGBTQ plus students, that they are in welcoming environments, that they find places where they belong, people who accept them and love them and support them as they are. And that goes beyond the bare subsistence of making sure that their bodies are safe, into places where their minds and their spirits are safe and they can experience joy. So thank you so much, Ty, for being here. That's our democracy in action.
Yes, nice stuff there. It's Busted Pencils. It's fully leaded education talk. Educated educators talking education. Our guest, editor of the new book, Transgender Justice in Schools, Rethinking Schools. 855-752-4842 is the number if you want to call and talk to us. Ty, you were talking, the focus on one of the chapters in the book. Yeah, right now, tell a little bit more too. Give me another highlight coming from the book. What can I hope for when this book arrives? What and again, you're not going to be able to cover everybody, but let's talk a little bit about it. Okay, so what else?
Yeah, I mean, I think other nuggets that are so wonderful. There's a couple of really great, really powerful personal stories in the first chapter about, trans teachers, their experiences, and trans students kind of standing up and working to educate other teachers. Particularly, there's a great article from Mihail Deitch about how their GSA students ended up teaching the whole school about pronouns and how to kind of respect their safety. And I feel like that is a outline for student power and kind of shifting the culture of a school. So definitely check that one out.
That's okay. Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. Educated educators talking education. How long did it take you guys to put this together, Ty?
It took about a year. And what I love about Rethinking Schools is it feels like it always starts with like a sense of community. Like I know you were sharing about Rethinking Columbus being your introductory point. And I think of Rethinking Schools, perhaps because I'm based here in Portland, where a lot of that editing and stuff is sometimes happening. I think of it as like, we're gathered around a table, we're talking about our curriculum. And I actually came to Linda with like, I'm struggling in my classroom, and she was like, you know what? I have a project for you. And I was like, all right. But it truly ended up being a real lifeline to other really visionary trans teachers, and kind of that sense of connectedness that, I really needed.
Yeah. So, and with that, and so we say Linda Christensen is the
Yes.
co-editor with
Yes.
you. And so just put that out there, co-editor of the book. When is the book? You kind of, I think you said once, but so right now I'm out there, I'm listening. What do I do? How do I get it? Where do I go? Tell me more about it, Ty.
Yes. Yeah. So go online to Rethinking Schools. You can order the book. We're also reaching out to unions to try to encourage like folks to make a big order and do some study groups. I'll be kicking one off here in Oregon with our local PAT to try to think about like, we built all this incredible power over the strike, and what now? What do we want to do around protecting trans teachers and students, even in a district like ours where we do have a lot of protections? We still have to educate each other on those protections, make sure students know about them, and can keep each other safe. So
think about the issue here, Ty, again, that what the backdrop with the political movement that's happening, that again, all of the anti-gay, don't say gay, don't say bathrooms, all of this is there something that potentially, as we come up to this school year, you're releasing the book. This is also a national election that we're going to be facing, the reality here that could have an impact potentially. Is there an excitement or a potential to say this might be a moment to maybe peel back some of this oppression?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, it is a moment to be trying to engage people in a sense of hope, right? And we haven't had a lot of that for a long time. And so I do think that I really believe in like this, the smaller local examples that students can see of that power is going to engage them in, you know, for example, wanting to vote and things like that. So yeah, if they are working on, you know, challenging curriculum in their own school that they want to see changed, right? That's like a little mini lesson in, you know, what it might look like to ask a politician to, you know, consider legislation, right? So I guess I think it's like a mirror of the bigger fights we need to have.
And that curriculum issue too, we bring that up too, because to start, you know, kind of go to, because we're coming to a close, kind of ending where we started, this whole idea of instructional time that you introduced us to, Ty, in 2020, which was, you know, look, Ty, transgender, sure, but you're a social studies teacher, and that's what you were hired to do, is teach social studies. And now 2024, transgender justice, the book coming out, Rethinking Schools. I mean, now we're talking about instructional time in saying that issues of LGBTQ need to be put forward, not as an aside, but how do we make real instructional time for that? Maybe that's the last question for you. How do we make instructional time, Ty?
Oh man, I mean, you're so right. It's a national version of the same conversation we were having in 2020 and has been happening before that about what's allowed in schools and what are we allowed to talk about. And I guess I would always come back to like, the more we can bring students' identities into the school and make space for them, the more powerful they're going to feel. And a lot of these issues, right, whether we're talking about race, whether we're talking about gender, if we as the adults in the building aren't willing to be vulnerable, be messy, and try and make mistakes, then the students aren't going to feel that same sense of safety. So whether it's your very first time, you know, asking students on a little note card, what's your preferred pronoun, or it's your first time, you know, acknowledging like, hey, I'm a white teacher and I'm going to mess this up, but let's try to talk about, you know, whatever it is, like those steps are incredibly important part of like reshaping the instructional time of 2024.
Well, our guest tonight was Ty Marshall, Jess doing the snap on that partnership with Rethinking Schools, and the new book coming out. We can order it by going to Rethinking Schools, the website, pre-order Transgender Justice in Schools.
Find the link in the podcast.
There's the link in the podcast. It'll be there, and you can see it right now. If you're on the Twitter X, the Facebook, or the YouTube,
that's beautiful.
You can see the cover right now. Ty is holding up for all of us. Ty Marshall, thanks for busting pencils.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and there we go. You know what, Jess? I'm excited. We're going to chop it up. Hold on.
I wanna heal, I wanna feel like I'm close to something real. I wanna find something I wanted all along. Somewhere I belong. I wanna heal, I wanna feel like I'm somewhere I belong. I wanna heal, I wanna feel like I'm somewhere I belong. Somewhere I belong.
Thank you, Ty.
Yeah, thank you.
So the podcast will be probably up tonight, so that you can have access to that to share it. And again, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for the great work. And you know, I always say we know that Rethinking Schools now always has this date every month, and it would be great to have you back in a few months when the book's released, and you can start to, you know, give us some of the feedback about what you're hearing about teachers and students and parents who are using it. The unions would be a great way to check in with you again.
Yes, I would love that. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Awesome. So Ty, all you need to do is he can just click out, right, Jess?
He can, but let me check recording.
It's-
Okay. Ty, if you can turn off your camera, and then I will send you a message in the group chat when you are ready to leave. Thank you.
So we got LA Tom all riled up, Jess, huh?
Yeah.
Busted Pencil, fully leaded education talk. Educated educators talking education. 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. If you want to call, great guests for the first three parts of the show. Time Marshall, editor, Rethinking Schools, Transgender Justice in Schools. Go to Rethinking Schools, check out the website there, and then from there you can order the book and have it ready to go. Huh. LA Tom's on the phone though. LA Tom, what's happening, my friend? What's going on?
Well, Tim, as you know, I mean, we don't always agree with things that we talk about, and that's how we educate ourselves and everything like that. I grew up in a very small town of 2,000 in the state of Wisconsin, a gay kid that was in the closet until I was 21 years old, and had all the issues and everything else that goes along with it. I'll tell you what, if we can just say to students like Coach Walsh's wife did, Gwen, that my classroom is a safe space for all people, whether they're gay, straight, black, white, fat, thin, whatever it is. You kids are all in this together, and you need to respect each other instead of just picking out, as an example, transgender group. First off, 10% maybe of the population is trans. And if we start like talking about trans without bringing it to a school board or parents ahead of time, we are going to end up falling right into the right wing's trap. And we're going to end up honestly harming more children than we are helping them.
It's Busted Pencils, fully leaded education talk. Educated educators talking education. Yes, LA Tom there. He's got a point.
I hear LA Tom and I hear the concerns, and I think if we say that this is a safe space for everyone, we can say who this is a safe space for. We can say that it is a safe space for people who are cisgender and people who are not cisgender. This is a safe place for people who are of any sexuality. This is a safe space for all people. And that doesn't diminish anything.
Right. Yeah, what is, we get into this language talk about, the diminishing and things like that. And man, I think just staying on, with Ty and gonna go back to the simplicity, joy. And when you talk about inclusive diversity of who's there, that should be a joyful space when you say, what is a safe space? Who are we including? I'm falling into the right wing's trap. I don't know, Jess, right?
That doesn't speak to me. I think the statistic that, Tom has brought up, that, approximately 10% of the population is trans. That's a huge percentage of the population. That's a huge percentage of the population who deserves to feel safe and seen and welcomed and joyful. And I don't think that there is a right-wing trap here. I think that people who do not want equality for all people are going to say that regardless.
Yeah, and as we're going through and talking, more about just again the inclusiveness. What I think right now, the right wing trap. I don't think their trap's working. I think right now, every time that they point out their attack on diversity, their attack on equity, their attack on inclusion, their attack on safe spaces, it's like that is gone right now. And people are saying like that pain, that hatred, that anger, that dismissal of human beings that you guys are advocating, you are advocating the exclusion of brothers, sisters, friends, neighbors, doctors, lawyers. We don't do that type of work. This moment of hatred-filled rhetoric and policies that we have now witnessed over the last few years, maybe it's finally time that when people come out in this kind of speaking where they're going to push against a guest like we just had, Ty Marshall, talking about transgender justice, it's time. Keith from Middleton on the phone. What's happening, Keith?
How you doing, guys? It's my first time calling to talk to you guys. I've been talking to other shows and so forth. I'm right on the border of a boomer. People call me boomer. I'm born in '65, so technically I'm the last year of the boomers. And like I was telling the young lady who answered the phone, I don't understand a lot of non-binary, or I understand trans. I understand when people are born and their bodies don't match their chromosomes, or sometimes they may have multiple sex organs. I mean, there are people, unfortunate children, who are born with multiple sex organs, and who decides which they are assigned, so to speak, at that point. So whether I understand it or not doesn't matter, and it shouldn't matter to anybody. We're talking about children. I don't care if the kid has a stutter. I don't care if he's wearing braces on his legs because he can't walk without that, or she. I don't care if that kid has alopecia and doesn't have a hair on their head. I don't care if that kid decides that they want to be gay.
It's all about accepting people as they are, right, Keith?
Thank you. And that's all that matters. We're talking about kids, and by not doing these things.
So sorry, we're running out
I know.
of time here.
We're coming down on the time, and Keith, thanks for the call though. And yeah, inclusion that way. Hey, just a reminder too, Busted Pencils, we love this, sponsored by Minocqua Brewing Company. Go and check out the tap room in Madison, right out there by East High School. Grab a beer. Minocqua Brewing Company, making Wisconsin great again. Drinking one beer, making Wisconsin great again, one beer at a time. Sorry, check
Only
out
been our sponsor for months.
Check out MinocquaBrewing.com, MinocquaBrewingCompany.com to see where you can buy their progressive beer. Jess, Busted Pencils, man, great show. Ty, Rethinking Schools, thank you for coming. Callers, Keith, LA Tom, man, loving it. Tomorrow night, Educators Amplified, Teacher Joanna in the house. Busted Pencils, see y'all tomorrow.